I should admit that even I didn't know much about minimum rental standard requirements, should I say maybe 4 or 5 months ago, and what are they? And I think government doesn't do a lot of justice as well.
I have seen during my 25 years of property management and doing routine inspections and going into a property and actually seeing how disgusting it is.
Like,
correct.
Insurance would not cover you because it's also protecting them against the risk of an insurance claim being denied. A lot of stereotype that people have is that a lot of these rebates, and so, naturally, if there's free money available from the government to make some of these upgrades, then tap into it.
There's been a death. A child has done that.
How much is the burn, or what sort of damage has been caused? Co-living properties can generate almost $140,000 in passive income and net of $40,000 in passive income after mortgage repayments, and they sit in an average yield of about 10%. Hello and welcome to another episode of Help Me Buy Property Podcast. Today we are talking about minimum rental standards. Now, there's a lot of talk that is happening around minimum rental standards, especially in Victorian state, where a lot of stereotypes, a lot of myths, a lot of misinformation that is out there about minimum rental standard requirements that is causing a lot of riffraff with investors, with owner-occupiers, with people transitioning into being investors in Victoria. Now, Victoria is one of the hottest market that is happening right now across all of Australia. So, of course, it makes a lot more sense for investors to look at Victoria and what are these minimum rental standard requirements that are out there which are going to impact their investment journey. In order to discuss this today, I have a guest who was here on our show before as well, and we talked a lot about rebates and how Victorians or landlords or owner-occupiers can use rebates for their investment journey. Today, she's coming here discussing about minimum rental standards. Let's do a drum roll. Welcome, Nicky. Nicky, how are you?
Thank you, Mars. I'm good. Thanks. How are you?
I am amazing.
Excellent. Thank you for having me.
Minimum rental standards. I should admit that even I didn't know much about minimum rental standard requirements. Should I say maybe 4 or 5 months ago, and what are they? And there's so much misinformation out there when it comes to minimum rental standards.
Absolutely.
And I think government doesn't do a lot of justice as well, because the media, or you talk about major publications, they talk a lot about the negative side of things. They don't talk about the positive side of things. So what we're going to do today is go into a lot more detail using your expertise and experience, you being a veteran when it comes to property management. So let's talk a bit about what are the minimum rental standards.
I think let's start off with what are minimum rental standards. And the government legislated, obviously, back in 2021 with the Residential Tenancies Authority, and they brought in new standards which encompass smoke alarm checks, gas checks, electrical checks, but then a general minimum standard to make sure that a rental property is in a livable state, where there were too many. As a property manager, we used to call them slumlords. There were too many slumlords out there that were just not keeping their property up to even a decent livable standard. So renters were living in conditions that were abhorrent. They were living with mold. They were living with locks that didn't work, windows that wouldn't close, bedrooms and living areas that didn't have curtains. They didn't have any privacy. So they brought in all these legislations, which as a property manager, we thought they were brilliant.
Yeah.
To then have them worked through over the last few years.
Yeah.
We've seen houses go from really just properties where you wouldn't put your dog in to properties that are now livable, comfortable, and renters are happy. And then you get long-term renters, and you also get renters that are happy to pay the rent, and they look after your property. You look after them and the property, and they will look after you.
And I think that's a very important point, right? I think one of the things that divides an astute investor from a first-time investor is the student investor will think about, lower vacancy rates, long-term tenants, consistent income, right? Whereas if you provide a property that is appalling conditions, or a property where you're not providing the right quality of services, then of course your quality of tenancy would be impacted as well.
Absolutely. And currently right now, the legislation is changing that a property must meet these rental minimum standards prior to it being advertised, which I think is excellent, because there are properties that are on the market, and I know I actually saw one about 3 weeks ago that does not meet rental minimum standards. There are nails, hooks, boards, all sorts of things hanging out of walls, and yet the property is on the market for rent, and people aren't renting it for that very reason.
And a lot of people don't understand that, a lot of these, I call them compliance regulations, right, are in the best interest of not just the tenants, but also landlords, right? Because it's also protecting them against the risk of an insurance claim being denied.
Correct. Exactly right. Exactly. And that's spot on. Like if your property doesn't meet rental minimum standards and it's unsafe, and you make an insurance claim and it's found that the property was unsafe, well, you won't be covered.
Yeah.
So it's in your best interest as an investor, but also as a homeowner, to make sure that your property is safe and secure for the people that are living in there.
Definitely. And so let's take the next step forward. What are these minimum, let's break the myth, and, for viewers and listeners, let's help them understand what are these minimum rental standards.
Do you know the biggest issue that I find with these rental minimum standards is that people think there's too much to be done.
Yeah.
It's actually not. For example, bathrooms. Bathrooms, really all a bathroom needs to have is functioning wash basin, hot and cold running water, a shower where they can wash themselves. Now, that's not hard.
Yes, that's basic amenities.
Basic. It's these minimum standards are actually very basic items to make sure that your property has. So it's not hard to do. At the moment, the standards for your shower is a 3-star rating for a shower head. But, there are exceptions if it's a heritage listed property or it can't be done. There's always a bit of an exception if something can't be done for whatever reason. Always check the exceptions. But it's really, I just can't get over how actually easy it is to do.
Yeah.
Electrical safety. That falls in line with your safety checks. So if your electrical safety check is passed, then your property passes electrical safety and your rental minimum standards.
Yeah.
So it's easy.
Yeah.
It's frustrating how easy it is that people go, I can't get my house up to rental minimum standards. You can, it's easy.
And so some of these are common sense as well. When you talk about electrical safety, for example, you would want your house to be electrically safe anyway, right?
Somebody or a kid sticking a knife into a PowerPoint or the toaster and electrocuting themselves.
100%.
Because as an owner, if your property doesn't meet rental minimum standards under Section 5 of the Act, you'll then be charged with criminal negligence.
Correct, yeah.
So you can have to go to jail.
And I think people do underestimate some of this, right? For a cost of $100 or $200 a year, you're exposing yourself to criminal charges. Again, this is not just Victoria. This is across the board, where if a tenant dies on your property and if they can prove that it was your fault, where the house was not provided in a safest condition, you are liable, right?
Correct.
And there was this one story that, someone shared on the podcast. I think this was in first season where, and this is so basic, right? They had an aircon, and you know how aircon have those dispensing units where the water comes out. And so they had a bucket of water sitting there outside where it was collecting water. Okay, like a lot of people would do, like
Yep.
it's a quick fix. So instead of running a whole sort of
A
pipe,
conduit.
a
Yep.
conduit and running to the drain, they had just a tub sitting there. A small kid, 3 years old or 2 years old, walks through, slips, and puts their head inside the bucket.
And drowns.
And basically, there was a mishap, right?
Yeah.
And whose fault was it? They thought that, hey, tenant problem. No, actually, the owner was basically called it. They said, well, you should have a conduit running through here. And so why did you have this? So again, this is like small basic things, right? People think that, hey, I can walk away with this. And again, fixing something like this would have costed him not even like $100 to $150, right?
Absolutely.
Now you have a criminal record against you. And yes, that wasn't intentional and we're not trying to do, but ultimately doing the right thing and providing a safe house while still making money off an investment property and building wealth. You need to have that fine balance between the two.
Don't get yourself taken on a ride by property spookers, so-called property investment advisors, or buyer's agents who are selling house and land packages or off-the-plan properties or apartments. Get yourself a copy of this book called The Millennial's Guide to Property Investing. This book is not just for millennials. The title suggests, but it's actually the most advanced way of investing in property. This book will relate to your clients, your colleagues, and other business owners. There are so many property spookers out there who have come out of the woodwork over the last 3 to 5 years. And there is so much misinformation out there that I had to write a book about all the F-ups that people can actually avoid in order to be super successful in the property investment journey. Some of these are really easy to identify, but they are so costly to fix once these mistakes are made. So it's a short book. It's easy to read. It has a lot of stories. It has a lot of examples, and it is a true guide for people who wants to do it themselves. My name is Moxin Reza. This is my story, and a lot of you will relate to parts of this story if you're not born in the riches and if you're trying to build a property portfolio that can last generations and help you improve your lifestyle along the way. So I give you a chance to come out there and have a read. Be kind, stay safe, keep smiling, keep investing, and please do check out the book.
Oh, most definitely. And if you had seen some of the houses that I have seen during my 25 years of property management and doing routine inspections and going into a property and actually seeing how disgusting it is. And what I mean by that is holes in the roofs, heaters not working, no functioning stove or kitchen facilities. And then these renters have got no bench space to cook anything. And they're actually literally on the floor.
Yeah.
Cutting up their vegetables on the floor, and it's heartbreaking.
Yes. And I mean, some like with affordability rental crisis that is happening or rent crisis across the board, right? A lot of the tenants are basically not in a position to call out, right? It's like take it or leave it.
They are too scared. They don't want to cause any problems because they're scared that their rental history might then be affected.
Correct.
And they'll be put on the blacklist. But the blacklist is only for people who have been to VCAT.
Correct. Yes.
And have done the wrong thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's quite interesting. What else is there on the minimum standards list?
Look, I think heating's probably a really big one as well. Heating, you need to have a fixed source of heating that cannot be a portable. So something that you can get from Bunnings, for example, the little wall panel heaters where you take the wheels off and attach it to the wall, that is not minimum rental standards. So that is not energy efficient. And a lot of people have done that and just popped this very cheap portable heater on the wall as a fixed source of heating. But a fixed source of heating actually means it needs to be hardwired into the switchboard because if something happens with it, it needs to have its own safety switch.
Yeah.
So, things like your ducted heaters, gas wall furnace and the space heaters, they're going to be checked in your gas checks. But heating must be in the main living area. If you've got it throughout the property, brilliant. But it mustn't be a portable heater.
Yeah.
But heating needs to match an energy rating. So at the moment, I think it's 2.3. I have to double check what the act is, but it must meet an energy rating. Those little panel heaters do not meet that. And so the electricity bill for the renters will be sky high.
And it comes back to, complete normal, total common sense, right? Some of these old panel heaters on the wall where they're open-ended and the kid can touch it and burn themselves.
Correct.
Again, it makes sense for, the government to get rid of some of these things so that, you're making the house a lot more compliant. The other thing that it reminds me is majority of the electrical fires are caused because of these
heaters,
right?
That's right.
And so again, if you're non-compliant and if the house catches fire because of an electrical fire, because your house is not three-phase and majority of the houses would not be, and because they're super inefficient when it comes to energy ratings, they drain in a lot of energy and, they're not proper fuses that sits behind this. It causes a fire. You are not covered. Like
Correct.
Insurance would not cover you because the first thing that they're going to do as soon as they come on site is not look at how much is the burn or what sort of, damage has been caused. The first thing that they're going to ask is, who's your property manager and was this compliant?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's so simple to heat your property and to do it the right way.
Yeah.
Especially, as we talked about in the last session with the rebates that are coming out, but it's so simple to do the right thing with rental minimum standards to make sure that you're covered in every which way, shape and form.
Definitely. So you've talked about heating, we've talked about electrical.
Well, let's talk about kitchens and laundries.
Yeah.
So kitchens and laundries, so your kitchen in itself must have a functioning stove or a cooktop that must have a minimum of 2 coils. Now, that's, again, not hard to do.
Yes.
Most homes have 4. Most homes have a 4 burner, whether it's a gas or electric.
They're not that expensive.
They're not that
super cheap, right? You can buy one for like $300 or something.
Absolutely. And then as long as it's got 2. But the other thing is too, with the rental minimum standards, if something is in the property, it is deemed to be in working order.
Yeah.
So if you've got a stove that has 4 burners, but only 2 of them are working, whilst the Act says you must have 2, you actually have to have those other 2 working because it's in the property. So that must be in good working order. So if it's not, replace it, get rid of it, put a new one in or fix it or whatever needs to be done. So, and then it must have a sink with hot and cold running water.
Makes sense.
Pretty simple.
Yeah.
It's not that bad. And a dedicated area to prep food.
Yeah.
How hard is that? You need a bench, a stove, and a sink.
Yeah. And in your experience, have you, like you were sharing some of these stories before, there are properties where there is no kitchen bench space available?
Absolutely.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. I've actually, when I was personally looking for a rental, we would go and we would have a look, and they did have a bench space. Okay. So they had this much space, which is like a couple of inches between the wall and the sink.
Yeah.
And then there would be maybe 60 centimeters bench space.
Wow.
And then the cooktop.
Yeah.
And then the wall.
Yeah.
And I would look at that, and because it did meet the minimum standards, it was still okay.
Yeah.
But I would look at it from, I was a chef prior to being in real estate. So I look at it going, I can't cook on that. I can't prepare food on that. I need way more room. But that's how simple it is to have the property meet rental minimum standards. As long as you've got a dedicated area for prepping your food.
Yeah.
A sink and a cooktop. How hard's that?
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of the times right now, I know that some of these appliances are being phased out. And that's an opportunity for people to tap into rebate. A lot of stereotype that people have is that some of these rebates from Energy Efficient Victoria, VEUU, a lot of these rebates are only available to owner occupiers, whereas that's not really
definitely not.
Yeah. And so naturally, if there's free money available from the government to make some of these upgrades, then tap into it. And
get into it. Absolutely. And they're available to investors. The Victorian Energy Upgrade Program is available to investors.
Yeah.
And then if they're earning less than $210,000, they also get the Vic Solar. So walk into it. It's super easy to get your house up to standards.
Definitely.
And cheap as well. And it brings it right back to all of the rental minimum standards, because it's so easy to get your property up to standard now.
Definitely.
It's just so easy.
Definitely.
Another item that we look at is the laundry. And again, it's not very hard. If you've got a laundry, it needs to have a decent supply of hot and cold water.
Yeah.
That's it.
That. Yeah.
Running hot and cold water. I should
What's
say
the
that.
difference when you say running? Oh, of course, running, like coming out of the...
Well, there are some laundries that only have cold water,
Yes.
for example, so they don't have hot water. So you can't run a bucket and put hot water in it in a laundry to mop your floors. So you got to do that in the kitchen.
Yeah.
So that's why they say a laundry must have a good supply of hot and cold running water.
So this is very interesting because a lot of these old apartment buildings where there is only hot water in, like I know houses in Essendon, for example. I know, one of our, work colleagues lives in Essendon as well. Their laundry only comes and gives cold water because we were having this interesting conversation about, hey, I only have cold water going into my washing machine and my washer basically converts it into hot water. I was like, what? Like, I thought you always require two. I was like, no. So are you saying that these requirements require them to change the plumbing
Yes.
to include hot water in there?
Yes.
But then how do these apartment buildings would go around doing this? Like that would be...
Again, there will always be an exception if it can't be done. So again, heritage listed properties are the best example of where an exception will be. There will be exceptions with apartment buildings because you may not be able to do it. It may not be physically able to do it. So lighting's the next one that we're looking at. And again, lighting's easy. You need to have lights in every room, and whether it's electrical, artificial is what they call it, or whether it's borrowed light from the window. So you need to be able to safely walk around your house at nighttime, either with an artificial light or during the day with borrowed light.
Yeah.
So if your hallway doesn't have any bedrooms off it, for example, and you can't open the bedroom so you've got borrowed light from the windows, you've got to have a light in the hallway, an electrical light or an artificial light. So you've got to have some form of lighting. That's it.
Yeah. Total sense.
It's not rocket science.
Yes. Yeah.
It's pretty easy.
So they're not calling out on any fancy lighting or any particular lighting. It's just, hey, have lighting.
Correct.
That's what it is.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
And then look, door locks are a bone of contention. And they have been since they came in. And these have actually changed a few times since they were first released and to what they are now. And the door locks is as long as you can open it with a key and lock it behind without a key. So basically, if you can unlock the door without a key, so that if in case of a fire, you're not then racing off to find keys, then that is safe. But there are other little tricks as well. So if you've just got a key opening lock, like a little handle that has got, a key at the back, well, it's not going to be compliant. But if you've got a security door at the front of it that can lock, then it is compliant. So there's all these little tricks with door locks that can confuse people. I actually had a meeting with some property managers yesterday and we were going over the door locks and what it needs to be. And if you've got just the one door lock in an apartment building, but you've got where it doesn't have a deadlock, for example, or a dead latch or a dead bolt, but it does have an apartment building door lock, well, then that's okay.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So that actually meets. Or if it's got a lockable gate.
Yeah.
So then that door then meets the requirements.
Yeah.
So you've got to really look at the door lock situation to the next set of either locks or doors or gates in the property or a security door. So locks can always be a bit tricky.
And is it very subjective as to how people are looking at it and, the person? And that's potentially why a minimum rental safety check is required, making sure that you're compliant.
Yeah, look, we do really, for this reason, there's a couple of other reasons, but especially for door locks, we always recommend that you get somebody who is a professional and knows what they're looking at to do the minimum rental standard check, because they can have a look at the lock. They know what the legislation is. They know the next barrier and the next barrier that it might actually pass because of a security door or a locked gate or a locked apartment building door. So it just depends. Whereas, an owner who may not have seen their property for 5 years, they don't necessarily know what that door lock is, whether it has a jet lock, whether it's key locked on the inside. So Yeah, there's lots of
Yeah.
things that
And especially like with a lot of these digital locks coming these days, where you can open it with an app and close it with an app, and no one has a key these days. And, that becomes quite ambiguous, right?
yes, it does.
So, because, you can still open it, but there is no more key anymore.
Yeah.
Everything is digital these days with a thumbprint or a tap,
Yep.
and unlocking it with the mobile app. So, yeah.
My concern with the digital ones is, what if the battery dies?
Yes.
Well, how are you going to get in then? Like,
Yes.
I love them. They're brilliant, but
They're convenient, but they can get really tricky.
See, as a property manager, whenever I did routine inspections, because I did it then, I still do it now. If I lock something, I double check it before I leave.
Correct.
Because I never ever wanted to go back to the office and the renter say, "You left my house unlocked." I go, No, I definitely did not.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yes, there is a lot of convenience there where a property manager can lock and unlock a door or a site, especially when it comes to rooming houses, etc. But then there is a lot of downside risk as well, where these locks break down. A lot of these comes from China, and they might not be the best quality possible, right? So it's always important to have what I call it as a stop loss, a key.
yes.
So that you
Just in
always
case.
basically just in
Yeah.
case.
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah. It's because you just never know.
Mm.
So,
Interesting.
and two simple factors. So we've got mold and damp, and then we've also got structural soundness.
Okay.
Now, unless you are going to get a builder in, or you're going to get a mold expert in, when somebody does these minimum rental standard tests, we're just looking for visible mold.
Yeah.
So it's visible mold. So you can't have mold in your property. Structural soundness, most properties have your general minor structural crack here and there, or the movement crack, I guess is what we call them in property management, where you've got this little bit of crack that's here that has been there for years and it hasn't moved.
Yeah.
What they're looking for with structural soundness is major things, where you got a door that's on such an angle that it can't close anymore, or the gap is too high or too low. Or I actually had one, which I still can't believe the owner at the time didn't want me to give an immediate notice to vacate to his renter.
Wow.
The kitchen floor had come away from the wall.
Oh, really?
So I could put my whole arm between the wall and the floor and see outside.
Wow.
And yet the owner goes, "There's nothing wrong with that house." And I said, that house does not meet structural soundness. It is unsafe. You cannot have it. You could stand in the kitchen. You could bounce up and down like a trampoline.
Yeah.
I've never seen anything like it in my past.
A property for a client, and we walked away from that property where they had an outside pergola standing on a single pole. Like this was not a post. It was not like a structural steel or anything like that. It was a thin wooden post.
Yeah.
Which was probably from 50s, right? And I was like thinking twice even walking under that pergola, because it's like it would just take one wind. And these are like old shackles where it would just fall off, right?
Yeah.
Again, it comes back to be common sense, right? If this falls on a kid or a child or a tenant, you will be criminally liable.
Correct.
Your insurance will not cover you. So again, it makes total sense, right? That, you need to have some sort of common sense around this.
You do. And the minimum rental standards is all actually common sense.
Yes.
It really is.
Yeah.
So it's not hard. Toilets must be in good functioning order.
Of course.
They must be able to flush. And they must be attached to either septic or your sewage.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
As long as you've got one, then you're all good. But again, if you've got 2 or 3 toilets in the property and the other 2 aren't working, you must get that other one or 2 to work.
Come under like emergency fixations. Like if a house has, say, 4 toilets and, 3 of them are working, 1 is not working, does that, qualify as urgent repairs?
Plumbing generally is always urgent repairs. Even if, not, yes and no. I guess it depends what's actually happening. So if the toilet's not flushing, for example, but you have other toilets in the property that you can use, then it's not an urgent repair. But if that toilet is leaking water and the water is gushing out everywhere, well, then that is an urgent repair.
Yeah, definitely.
So there's always a what if situation. But definitely if you have multiple toilets and only, one of them's not working, it still needs to be fixed within the 14-day period. Again, urgent maintenance is urgent. It's to be done now, not in 2 or 3 days or 5 days or whatever. You need to action it immediately.
One of the things that I always say to people as a property investor, you always need to have buffers in place for you.
Got to have, yes.
Yeah, for, things, unforeseen circumstances do happen. But also when you've bought a property or when the rent is due for lease or the tenancies are changing, get a handyman through, get an inspection done, make sure that you are getting all of these things done in one go, right?
Yes.
Rather than sending out handymen for little things, because every time they come out, there would be a call out fees. Whether it's just a nail on the wall,
100%,
or a leaky tap, right?
Yep.
They'll add a call out fees, right? So you would rather pay a call out fee once and get everything fixed in one go versus getting them out 10 times.
Absolutely. Like we used to have good practice that we would have a week in between one tenancy moving out and one moving in.
Yeah.
And that was to allow us to, make sure that when the renters did leave, that they'd left it neat and clean and tidy.
Yeah.
But that if there was any maintenance that needed to be done in that time, you get it done prior to the renter moving in, the new one, so that, as you just said, you're not paying multiple people multiple times throughout the year to get minor things fixed.
Yeah.
Get it all done.
People try to save some of these upfront costs thinking that, they can stagger it over a year or stagger it over 2 years without realizing that staggering would mean that they would spend like 3 or 4x of the same price.
Exactly right. They're paying double or triple what they would have if they did it part-time.
Yeah. A lot of people, what they don't realize is if there is a leak there, even if it's a leaky tap, by the time the water keeps seeping through the floor or the architraves anywhere, right? Now you have a part of the floor that needs the tile changed, that the grout is missing because of this leaky tap, right?
That's right.
That leaky tap would have been fixed for like $100. And now it's $100 for the leaky tap plus another $200 to fix the grouts now.
Yes. Get it done straight away. Yeah. Yep. So, but actually, here's an interesting point, not to do with leaking taps, but ventilation. Now, ventilation in a rental property is, again, it's a bit of a bone of contention because it can be confusing, but it actually isn't confusing. So if you have a toilet or a laundry, for example, that doesn't have windows, it must have an exhaust fan. So it's not hard. It's just an exhaust fan, and the exhaust fan obviously needs to be vented, but it needs to have adequate ventilation throughout the whole property. Your windows need to be able to be opened, closed and locked, but also opened. So that's one of the things as well.
So every window needs to have a lock against it?
Every window needs to be able to be closed and locked. Now, it doesn't have to have a key lock.
Yeah.
It just has to be able to be closed and locked so that you can't open it from the outside. So if it's got the little black clasp that you slide in the window and it goes click and it locks, well, that's locked.
Yeah.
If you've got window locks, now this is the interesting factor. If it has window locks, the key entry, you must have a key for every one of those locks.
Yeah.
And if you don't, it doesn't meet rental minimum standards. So what's the point of putting key lock in it when your keys could potentially get lost?
Yes.
And then you need to get a locksmith to get that window locked fixed. As long as your window locks with a latch or a snib or something, then it's closed, it's locked, it's safe.
And maybe I found out, through my building, and development exercises that I do, the difference between a window and a sliding door is a nail. And I was like, okay, what does that mean? And so I was on a side with the builder and he showed this to me. He's like, look, this is a sliding door. And I was like, yeah. And he took a nail and put it in the tracks and now you can't open the door. And he's like, now this is a window. This is not a sliding.
Oh my goodness.
And I was like, are you sure? And he's like, well, this is what the rest code says.
Yeah.
If you can't move this is now a window. This is classified as a window. And I didn't believe it. I was like, oh, that must be a joke. And so when the building surveyor came in on the site, because that's what we were arguing at that time, that, hey, you were supposed to put a window here. If put in a sliding door, this would not pass through the risk code. The building surveyor turned up on site and he looked at it and he tried to pull it. He's like, window. I was like, Jesus, like really, it's actually a thing where you can just put a nail and lock the thing. And because it doesn't open, it's actually classified as a window.
That's mental.
I know, right? It's just, little things. And that's why the that wooden piece came into my mind that, if that works, this should work too.
Not technically.
Yes.
So it'd be great if it did. Yeah, so I mean, that kind of covers your windows because that's one of the points. But then window coverings. So your window coverings need to have, if it's deemed to be a living area or a bedroom, you need to have privacy curtains. Now, the reason I'm saying privacy curtains is because if I just say the word curtains, anybody could construe that as being, I can just put some sheer blinds up there and it's fine, it's covered.
Yeah.
It's actually not. They need to be block out privacy curtains so that you can't see in at night time.
As well.
At night time is the most important. So apartment buildings, been a bit of a furor with some reports that I've seen that have come out where you've got a multi-level apartment building and let's say we've got number 5, right? And you can't see in unless you're flying in a helicopter or you're in an apartment building across. But they didn't have any blinds. And the renter said, I would like blinds put in. I want privacy.
Yeah.
And then the owner asked me, well, why do I need to? It's in an apartment building. I said, because the bedroom or the living area has a window. Therefore, it must have privacy. So the whole point is that if the lights are on at night time and you can see in the window because there's no curtains or blinds, then it doesn't meet rental minimum standards.
And so what about these fly screens?
Fly screens don't come into it.
At all?
No.
Okay.
No, I mean, a fly screen is a luxury.
Yeah. Okay.
No, as far as I'm concerned, in Melbourne, we should all have fly screens. We've got flies and mozzies and bugs and all sorts of things.
It's interesting. I think in Queensland and in parts of Western Australia, fly screens are actually mandatory for rental compliance side of things, whereas in Melbourne, it's not. And
it's not.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Yep, it is a luxury item. And if you go and have a look at a property for rent, you go to an open for inspection and you've inspected it, but you haven't seen that it doesn't have fly screens. And then you move in and you go, well, I'd like fly screens. Well, the owner is not obligated to get fly screens.
It's insane.
Because you inspected the property and accepted it in the current condition.
Yeah.
So
it's more the blinds and the privacy blinds that are a lot more important. Correct. It's not just curtains, basically.
That's right. But now here's the next kicker with the blinds. You can't, then a little kid, most importantly, it's for children's safety. So
sure, okay.
We don't want a child to go up to the wall, wrap the blind cord around their neck and just spin.
Sure.
As they do.
Yeah.
Because my daughter does it. Oh my goodness. Stop it. But there's been a death. A child has done that.
Wow.
Where they've wrapped the blind cord around their neck and like kids spin around in curtains.
Yeah.
So they're going to spin around the blind cord and they strangle themselves.
Wow.
So that's the whole reason that this has been brought in and it's legislated now. But then come October, you don't have those blind cord safety anchors attached to the wall.
Yeah.
Then your property will not meet rental minimum standards.
Wow.
There is a height. It's 1,600 mil off the ground. But I sort of say any blind cord, as in me, I'm saying it, this is not legislation, attach it to the wall for safety of any children.
Yeah.
There's nothing that says a child won't grab a chair, push a chair up to the wall and wrap their head around it. Now, obviously that's, as long as you're meeting rental minimum standards, then that's not your fault.
Your fault.
But if you're going to get it in one room, do it in all of the rooms.
Makes sense.
Absolutely. And we can do it for free during a rental minimum standard check. So why would you not do it?
Yeah, of course.
It's crazy not to. So that is the latest legislation change that's come out in relation to the blinds. So that will fit into the blinds and go in the Act. So the second that's in the Act, you've got to make sure that you have it done.
Amazing.
Yeah. So, and then we've got one last thing, which is just rubbish bins.
Okay.
You need to have a rubbish bin, but it needs to be vermin proof.
Okay.
So if you've got a rubbish bin where the lid's broken,
Yeah.
cracked or damaged, and mice, birds, possums can get into it,
Yeah.
then it doesn't pass muster.
Yeah.
And then you're in the council. You're in the
It's-
council and you get a bin
Just
replaced.
replace it. Yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of the tenants don't even realize that they don't have to pay for them.
No,
Owner needs to pay for.
that's right.
So you don't need to wait for the owner to replace the bin. All you need to do is, just call the council. I think the two things that I learned when I used to be a tenant was, one, you have dedicated rubbish collection for hard rubbish. With majority of the councils, they can do it for free. All you have to do is just call them and book them in, and they can come in and collect some of these. If you're getting rid of a sofa or a bed or a mattress, or a washing machine,
Yes.
they can basically come out and collect it for you for free. That was one learning for me. And the second one was rubbish bins. Like, you can order a broken bin, you can order an extra bin, you can order a green waste bin.
That's right. You just
Without even asking for anything.
collect it and they'll drop it off.
Correct.
Yeah. It's
It's
super easy.
yeah.
Yeah.
And they don't even seek permission from the owner.
Nope.
They'll just give it to you because they know that it's your right to
Correct.
use it.
It's only if you're asking for another rubbish bin or a recycle, or if you don't have a green waste and then you're asking for a green waste bin, well, then that's got to go through the owner to be approved.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, you just ring the council and go, my bin's broken or the wheel's broken or whatever it might be.
Yeah. And they'll
replace it.
they'll replace
Yeah,
it for you.
it's brilliant.
Yeah.
So it's not hard to make your property rental minimum standard. You get your gas, electrical safety checks done. You make sure that it meets the 14 key points and the new blind cord safety anchors. Job's done. Your property's fine.
Perfect.
Off you go. Rent it.
And again, for viewers and listeners, they need to understand that majority of these rental standards that we are talking about is in relation to keeping the house safe, to making it more energy efficient, and 3, protecting you from any insurance claims denied for you not complying to some of these things as well, right? Because, you have a right or you're an obligation towards providing a safe, compliant place for tenants to enjoy and, people to enjoy their life and, call it their own home as well, right?
Yes,
So, yeah.
exactly right. And the better your home is and the more you look after the home, the more your renters are going to look after that home and pay their rent on time, and you'll have longevity in your renters.
Definitely. Nikki, where do people find you? If they want to come out for rebates, if they want to come out for smoke, electricity, gas, compliance checks, where do they find you?
Yeah, so we are Powerband Electrical. Our website is powerbandelectrical.com.au. You can reach me at 0409 417 234. My email is Nicky with an NICKY at powerbandelectrical.com.au. But yeah, you can reach out to us anyway. We've got Facebook, Instagram. It's all Powerband Electrical. You can jump onto any of our socials and have a look, reach out via that. Or, as I said, my phone number or my email address, and you can reach out. We do safety checks, gas, electrical and smoke, and we do them right. And minimum rental standards, as well as general electrical, plumbing, air conditioning installs, servicing, rebates, urgent maintenance, you name it, we do it if it's gas or electrical.
Amazing. Thank you for coming back on the show, Nikki.
Thank you for having me.
And for viewers and listeners, if you are trying to reach out to Nikki, do reach out to us. You can reach out to us at info@helpmebuy.com.au or jump on our socials at HelpMeBuy Property Podcast on YouTube. If you have your stories to share in relation to compliance failures
I'd love to hear them. I love good stories.
That would be great for you to share some of those stories on our socials. If you want to jump on the podcast and share some of those stories, please reach out to my team. Thank you for listening to us today. Take care, stay safe, keep smiling, keep investing. This is Nikki and Moss checking out. Adios.
Bye.